The University of Hawaii at Manoa is asking the state legislature for more money both in athletics and academics.
We're going to talk to the athletics director and the interim provost about their priorities and where that money would go. Spotlight Now starts now.
You're watching Spotlight Now with Ryan Kalei-Suchi and Yunji Denise on Hawaii News Now. Have questions or comments for our guests? Join the conversation in our Facebook live stream. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, it's another Tuesday. We want to thank you for tuning in here to Spotlight Now here on Hawaii News Now. We're going to get to our guests from the University of Hawaii in just a few moments, but we always like to invite the viewing audience to engage in the conversation. And this has already proven to be one of the more lively discussions that we've already had throughout the week on social media. So thank you to everyone who has gone over to social media and added your questions and comments for our guests. If you would like to share your thoughts, you can still do so by heading over to Facebook. You can enter your comments or questions there, or you can also email us here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
Lots of emails, hundreds of comments. We read them all, so we're going to start with our first guest, and that is UH Athletics Director Matt Elliott. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. Aloha.
People are so passionate about the teams, about this topic. Of course, the legislature now in session, and we've seen you go before them publicly to ask for funding. So let's sort of just back up a little bit. What are you asking the state for, and why should athletics be a priority for the state, for tax dollars?
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly grateful to President Hensel, the leadership team at the university, for just sort of framing how do we make this ask this year. And it has been a long process already, preparing for this legislative session. What we tried to do, and I think was really a great opportunity, was meet with legislators in the fall even and start talking about what does it mean to support athletics in this new era. And that's really what this is all about, is that college sports continues to change, shift in ways that we are figuring out what are those demands and how do we remain competitive. And the biggest change is that there is now this name, image, and likeness funding that we are allowed to provide to our student athletes directly, and that didn't start until July 1st of this year. So we are figuring it out on the fly. We are fundraising right now to meet our obligations for this year. But with President Hensel's leadership and guidance, she said, how do we explain to the state and to the legislature what would it take for us to be competitive? What would it take for us to continue to have this level of success going forward? And that's how we frame the request. So the request has a few different elements to it, but the two biggest are probably operational funding, which is just to run the programs. How do we support our student athletes from a nutrition standpoint, academic support standpoint, physical and mental health? So we've asked for $10 million to be able to do that and support our operations. And then the second is to create an NIL fund for our student athletes to be able to pay them for name, image, and likeness. And we've asked for $5 million for that.
Let's talk a little bit about NIL specifically, because there may be people who are viewing this and watch this and maybe have heard of what NIL is, but don't really fully understand the full context of how this has evolved. Because how NIL started, say 5 years ago is much different than where it is now. Right. Can you update us now and just give us context to where NIL is in this current stage? And with that funding, how would that be distributed if the legislature does agree to move forward with the request that you're asking?
Yeah. So let's say maybe 5 years ago, NIL really started to become an opportunity for student athletes, but you were never allowed to do it as an institution until this year. So for 2020 until this current year, you basically had third parties, outside entities, and they were called collectives that were able to fundraise without any real rules or regulations around that process, and then make relationships directly with student athletes and provide them with funding. And that was happening all over the country, and it was happening here in Hawaii as well. So we are that's something that was sort of a necessary, not evil if you will, but just filled a gap. Now that we're allowed to do this directly, essentially what we're saying is that part of the overall revenue and support that comes into a program can be shared back with student athletes, the ones who are putting in all of these hours to make our program successful. And we are having direct financial relationships with them where we sign contracts with student athletes from the university. And the way we're structuring it is essentially that's a cash stipend that we provide to them on a monthly basis.
How are other schools handling this? Because I think that, all the athletics programs are having to figure this out, as you said, on the fly. What do you see your counterparts doing? And, are they doing the same ask to legislatures? Are they trying to raise private dollars? And I know you're doing some of that as well. But this is now a huge burden for all of these schools to try to find this money and stay competitive.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at college athletics across the country, it really is viewed as an investment. It's an investment in what is good for the university, what is good for the state, and what is good for the next generation. So many schools, especially those at the power level, have, whether they have a balanced budget or not, most do not, already running a deficit, immediately committed $20.5 million to be able to pay for NIL for this year. And those are new dollars. So for a lot of them, that is the pressure to go out and fundraise for that. And that's where philanthropy comes in, and we're doing the same thing. We've set a target for this year of $3 million, and we're well on our way to being able to raise that philanthropically. But at the end of the day, the reality is that people are having to make really difficult decisions and budget calls. And I think in most cases, most states and most institutions are saying, we will backstop you. We will support what happens at your school, because there are plenty of examples out there of schools who lost $20 to $25 million last year on their athletics budget and have also committed a new $20 million this year. And that is something that their schools and states are allowing them to do. What we're trying to say is we have run a balanced budget. This last year, we only lost $160,000 for the whole department. And if we can get up front and make a plan for 26-27 that we all agree to, we think this is the right way to fund the program, then we will do our very best to run that balanced budget again with this additional support, but allow us to stay competitive and go out and try to represent the state and win championships.
How do you think the breakdown would work for the athletes that do receive this NIL funding? Because when we look at the college landscape, there are certain athletes who are the star athletes. Say your top tier quarterback, your QB1s, your wide receivers. Does football get more funding because they have to be more competitive? How do you disperse that amongst the athlete? Is there a ranking of the athletes that would receive more? How do you see this being distributed throughout the various programs and athletes?
This is really why name, image, and likeness came about. Because in the past, everybody got a scholarship, and that was the max that we could provide. And what happened through litigation and legislation was the recognition that some student athletes do drive more revenue to an institution than others, and is there a way to maybe compensate them differently? So what we've said is we believe by looking at both the Mountain West and other Group of 6 conference schools, so kind of the playing field that we're in, not necessarily the Power 4, about $5 million looks like a good starting number for next year to use for all sports. And we wanted to use that number as a way to set budgets for our different teams. So we said to Coach Chang, if $5 million is our target for NIL budget next year, try to set your roster at $2.5 million. That's what we thought was the right amount to allocate to football. Hopefully that's the right amount to allow us to continue to be competitive. And then it is up to the coach to answer your question. If those are the dollars that you can spend on the roster next year, figure out what does that mean for the quarterback? What does that mean for the defensive line? What does that mean for the safeties? And build your roster with that budget. And again, to me, it's very much about us being thoughtful and strategic up front, so that we're not then in a place 9 months from now saying, well, we've way overspent and we have this huge deficit. But let's try to really be transparent about it and strategic about it.
We mentioned off the top that we got, I think it was around 200 comments just on Instagram alone, a ton of emails. And there's real division in the community about, just how they feel about tax dollars going to individual student athletes. What's your best pitch about why this is a good investment?
I think it is a good investment. One thing we're working on right now is an economic impact statement. We've hired a consultant to go out and assess all of the economic factors that athletics brings into a state, and what is that trade-off. And I do believe reputationally, when you think about a school that has successful athletic departments, it's admissions, it's about enrollment, creating a better quality of life for students on campus. There are so many positives. And then there is, what does it mean to a community? And sports really can create joy. It can be something that brings people together. But if we choose not to do it, if we don't invest in NIL, and it may be true that none of us think NIL is the right way to go. It may be true that anybody who calls into this show or writes in thinks that, but it is the reality. That's where college sports is now. So it is in many ways a choice for us. And if we choose to invest and we want to put dollars into our program so that student athletes can make a wholesome decision about there's some money from the university, there's also this amazing community, tremendous fan base, outstanding culture, they are going to want to stay. And we've seen that already this fall as we have retained our football program. Those were the conversations we were having, is that there are some NIL dollars, but all these other things matter so much more. And if we do that, you're seeing a team that was 9-4 this year, that went out and played in the Sheraton Hawaii Bowl and got 2.7 million viewers watching our state, our university on Christmas Eve. There's so many powerful opportunities from us economically, socially, and in the community that if we make this investment, it allows us to really have that platform going forward.
So beyond the NIL funding that's being requested, you also mentioned some other things to help with upgrades and just overall maintenance for the department. What are some of those key things that you find are priorities outside of NIL that you are hoping that the state will invest in through this funding?
Yeah, and some of them are just trying to keep up with what these costs are. Travel is a big challenge for us, as everybody knows. It doesn't tie us back. It doesn't hold us in a place that we can't compete. We absolutely can still compete, but just those rising travel costs is one easy one that we've asked for more operational dollars to cover. A second is nutrition. A really strong athletic department puts their athletes at the best possible place to be able to compete, and that's with performance nutrition and just day-to-day meals. If you think about their schedules, we got athletes starting their days at 5:30, 6 a.m. They're going through a 2 or 3 hour practice, have to get to maybe the training room, then get to a class, maybe 2 classes, come back for team meetings at the end of the day. Their days are so full. A lot of times that doesn't leave much for them to get meals. So we try to provide as much food as we can, and we've got a system right now where we maybe get a meal or two to a team while they're in season. I think a thriving athletic department really does fuel and feed their students throughout the year, and that would make us much more competitive. So I would love to be able to invest in that.
I want to read one of the Instagram responses and get what your take on this. Are there other avenues or creative ways to generate new money for the department? What about selling more naming rights for other athletic venues, increasing food and beverage options during game operations, staying open later, after matches, targeting wealthy alums? I'm sure you're already doing some of this. Seeking more shared revenue streams with a new TV or contract partner. What are the other options for new dollars?
Yes, all. Great. Does that person want to come work with us? Because everything that person said is right on. So it does start with philanthropy. And that philanthropy is about building relationships with our community, setting out a vision, what we believe is possible for this athletics department in this state, and then if we get those dollars, how are those dollars going to make an impact? And that's what we've been trying to do over the course of the last 7 or 8 months, is really build those connections and tell those stories. And like I said, we've already raised more dollars this year than we did last year overall. We've already got, almost 2/3 of the way to our $3 million NIL target, with another couple $1 million in operational funding. So that is making a difference, and we're moving in the right direction, but that's something we got to keep doing constantly. In addition, there are a number of revenue opportunities in an athletics department where I do believe we can see growth. One is a multimedia rights partnership where we sell corporate sponsorships. We have a current deal right now that will be expiring next year. So we've already started that process to renegotiate that deal and see who else in the industry would be interested in being our partner. And I feel very bullish on the fact that people want to be our partner. The Hawaii brand is powerful. It is something that people want to be associated with, and that excites me. We just got a new media rights deal with the Mountain West, and that was announced, I believe, last week. And we are now in the process of working on a new local media rights deal, which we think can also be another revenue generator for us. So there are, premium ticket sales, doing a better job in making a fan experience one that people do come and participate in concessions and those seating opportunities. There are a lot of ways to kind of move those levers to generate more revenue, and that is our job, and we absolutely will be doing that in addition to the requests that we've made.
There has been a lot of talk in the community about this television partnership moving forward. Of course, it has been with Spectrum Sports for some time now, in a relationship that has gone on for over 10 years at this point, and now an opportunity to potentially look at other offers that are coming in. What is there anything specific that you are looking for with these new offers coming to the table that you think might be something that would be appealing to the department at this current state in time, when there is so much competition for this contract that's currently on the table?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Thank you for asking that. I think my number one priority, or our number one priority, is the intersection of our student athletes and our fans. I want to get as much exposure as possible so that everybody across our islands, but also we've got fans all over the continent. We've got international fans. We showed that this year, moving our football games into Japan, for example. So I would love to have a platform where football games, basketball games, volleyball games, that's what we're used to, but baseball, softball, soccer, water polo, how do we get more and more of those games produced, broadcast? Some's going to be on linear TV, but some of it's going to be on streaming as well. So a partner who really understands the storytelling around UH, the importance of our student athletes, inspiring our next generation. When a little kid, my 6-year-old son's watching on TV and he sees that game and learns about that athlete and is inspired to want to go do something, whether it's athletics or not, but just understanding those stories, it means so much. So I would love that. I think that's going to be at the core of the decision making. And then second of all, as we talked about before, it is a revenue opportunity as well. We are different and unique in this place because we are already broadcasting volleyball, men's and women's volleyball. We're already doing most of our baseball games. We get some softball games out there. There aren't many other communities that are broadcasting Olympic sports above and beyond football and basketball. So we've got to take advantage of that, and that is a real benefit for us.
What have your conversations been like with lawmakers? Are you getting a lot of pushback? We know that the university historically has not always had, the friendliest relationship, shall we say, with some lawmakers, and it has been contentious at times in some of those hearings. But what has been your experience as you go out and make this ask?
Yeah, I love it. I think it is so positive to have the conversations and understand it's a long game, and understand that it requires education for people to look at NIL and say, well, why would we do that? You've asked me some of these questions. That doesn't make sense. Why would we invest? So I just hope that we get to keep telling our story. And again, with President Hensel's leadership, started trying to do that in the fall before we even had bills on the table. But I don't know if you saw last week, there was a House hearing, and they were generous enough to host their hearing on our campus. And that gave the opportunity for our student athletes to be able to come out and speak to the legislators. Some of our coaches came out and spoke to the legislators, and alumni as well, student athlete alumni. I didn't even need to be in the room. There was nothing the administration needed to say, because the stories that our student athletes told about how incredible this experience was, how they'd been dreaming about this for a decade to get to this place and represent UH, and what it was going to mean to them for the rest of their lives, that to me encapsulated what it means to have a robust and successful athletics department. And I love that the legislators engaged in that way. And we have bills in both the Senate and the House right now that really recognize the importance of us coming together and finding solutions.
I want to ask you about something else aside from just the funding that has really changed the landscape of college athletics, and that's the transfer portal. Yep. At this stage, continues to be a lot of discussion and debate over how this is managed, and if there should be some sort of limit that's placed on the amount of transfers a student athlete can use, or if there's any penalties, because ultimately that is what has gone away with this new transfer portal and the new ruling. Yep. In your state and what you're seeing in the development of college athletics, do you think that there needs to be stricter regulations on the transfer portal? And what would be, you think, an ideal scenario where maybe this could exist but with limitations, or are you happy with the way that it is now?
No, I don't think it's the right system. I think we've gone too far the other way. It was extraordinarily restrictive when I first started in college athletics 15 years ago, where students could barely move around, and it felt that's not fair. Anybody who wants to transfer can transfer. So what's going on here? But now the pendulum is swung completely the other way, where we have no regulations or restrictions. And I don't think there needs to be restrictions necessarily, but a logical process where at the end of the day, the goal is to get a degree and to graduate from a program. That's what I would like us to get back to, as sort of the NCAA membership and our legislation and all the rules around it, as we're incentivizing somebody who stays at a school and earns their degree. That is the best outcome for the University of Hawaii, is that students come here, whether they're local or they come from somewhere else, come here, stay here, be here for 4 years, stay in this community, work here, help us build the future. That is the dream. That is the ideal of what we're trying to accomplish. So the transfer portal undermines that. But one of the great, until the rules change, one of the great sort of responses to the transfer portal as a free-for-all is if we have great culture here, amazing community around our athletes, and some NIL money, our students will stay and they will graduate, and they're not going to want to go somewhere else, and that's what we're trying to protect.
Let me ask you about another thing that could be transformative to UH athletics, and that, of course, is Aloha Stadium.
Yes.
How do you feel about the progress so far? Do you believe that, when do you believe your student athletes will actually be in that stadium and that the fans will be in the seats? And what kind of a difference is that going to make?
Oh, massive. And I do believe it. I do believe we're going to be there in the fall of 29. So just this morning, I came from Halava. There was a sort of stadium authority ceremony and blessing of the new temporary offices. So they're not meeting in the building anymore because it's coming down. So that's really positive. A lot of folks there who have been working for a long time to make this possible. And what they talked about was, this is not just a stadium. This is a community district. This is a community asset. Museums, shopping, housing, hotels. So the stadium's one part of it, and clearly that is going to draw people. But when you think back about what could it mean to have our team back in that stadium, and you think about the generations who have been there and tailgated together and built memories in the parking lots and in the stadium and remember their high school games there, their college games there, and where we want to get back to, that is inspiring. And I think that is a centerpiece of our momentum and our progress going forward. And I do genuinely believe there are leaders in place right now, and there's alignment throughout the state that we can get there in 29.
Just from a practical standpoint, when we get to 29 and when UH is in the stadium,
yes,
we're going to speak positively about that. What happens to the Clarence C.C. Ching complex? I mean, is there plans for what that becomes? Because right now it's the temporary stadium. But what do you envision that complex becoming if football is no longer going to be using it the way it does? Does the infrastructure kind of stay like that? Have you guys had discussion on what the long-term plans look like for that facility?
Yeah, I don't have that answer right now. I know before I got here, there was an investment in a master plan, kind of a lower campus master plan that has a number of different options. We'd obviously have to update that now if we know the target is 29. The temporary structure, I'm sure, will come down, all the scaffolding and the seating and whatnot. But it does give us a great opportunity to reimagine that space, do more, some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, nutrition or training rooms, where we do physical and mental health work, academic spaces. You get to combine some of that, some new locker rooms with some competitive spaces. There's a lot of room there. So I think we've got real potential. And then if you look out at the lower field where we've got the new soccer field and the track, building off that and trying to put in seating there and scoreboards and lights, we could be doing a lot more from a competitive standpoint on campus as well. So that's exciting.
It's hard to overstate just how important that UH athletics is to some parts of Hawaii, that this is Hawaii's team, for better or worse, right? And so there's a question here that I want to read to you. With no professional sports team in Hawaii, the University of Hawaii is often described as the state's team and used to justify public support and funding. If that's the case, should UH athletics operate under professional level expectations when results aren't there and fan support drop? Should leadership changes be handled more decisively? And should athletes and coaches alike be held to a higher standard of performance and accountability?
It's an interesting question on the athletes because I think we're moving in a different direction. And when they're now potentially getting compensated, there's a lot of discussion about should student athletes be employees, for example? Should there be collective bargaining? You obviously see that at the professional level. That hasn't happened yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that does come down the road, that there's more structure there. So that is a possibility. On the coaches side, first and foremost, we have outstanding coaches at this university. One of the things that I am so incredibly fortunate about is walking into this space is my predecessors, folks who came before me, and university leadership have put together a staff, put together individuals that care so much about our student athletes, that lead with integrity, that worry about what does it mean for this person's experience to lead to great outcomes for their future. That's always going to be at the core. What is the student athlete experience? So yes, we might be moving more into a professional model, but they're still students. We're still trying to graduate. We still want to make sure we represent this state the right way. We don't have scandals and violations and all that kind of. So that's the first thing. And then second, when you evaluate coaches, this is the AD's job, you do look at how is the coach performing compared to the resources they receive and the level that you're at. And that is just always part of the assessment that you do. But I would say across the board, incredibly impressed with the humans that we have leading our students right now.
Let's just talk about what happens if this doesn't go through. Right?
Yes.
Because there is a lot of talk about, obviously, and a lot of momentum that the department is trying to push towards making this happen with the legislature and finding a way to get this funding. If that doesn't happen and the state comes back and says we can only give you X amount or maybe nothing at all, can the department survive? And how do you anticipate a backup plan if this money doesn't come through?
Yeah, it is on us to have that backup plan already in place, and that is around prioritizing fundraising in a way that will take up a lot of our energy and oxygen to be in that space, but we have to do that anyway. I think there's a lot of structure we can build around fundraising. When you think about staffing, for example, in that space, when you can increase staff, then you think you can get more of a return there. It's a return on our investment. So that would have to be more of a priority for us to really focus on the private sector and fundraising. But all the things we talked about earlier, where there are opportunities to generate more revenue, the bottom line is we're trying to fill probably a couple year gap right now before hopefully the stadium comes online. There's a significant revenue increase opportunity once you're playing your games in a place that has double the attendance possibilities, has the tailgating coming back, has concessions at that level. So we're looking at models that are long-term sustainable, but with new NIL expectations and kind of what we're facing right now, we do believe this is a wise investment from the state. But if it doesn't happen, we didn't have it this year, right? And we're trying to raise $3 million to do NIL this year, and I think we're going to do it. We're going to cover what we need to cover, but we have put an enormous amount of energy into that. I would love to be able to tell our coaches, this is your foundation. This is what you have to go out and set up your roster for the next year, and do it in a way where we're like, okay, now we're building on that, and momentum will grow.
We're almost out of time, but
Sorry.
I do want I do want you to reflect, if you would, just about what the time has been like for you, because you're stepping in when all the rules basically are changing as you take on this job. It seems like an incredible amount of stress, but I don't get a lot of stress from you.
No.
I get a lot of joy from you.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, I really don't feel stressed. I feel this is amazing. This is like the best job I could possibly imagine. And it is a long arc. It's a long season. We have football and volleyball, and then we keep going. Some days you win. Some days you lose. That's sports. You got to be able to accept that and be ready for that. But we've been doing a lot of winning, and that's been awesome. And I think that, again, is a tribute to our student athletes and our coaches and our staff, the staff that has been there way before me, the university leadership, our community that loves this place so much. There's so many good pieces in place. And I just get to be a part of it and just think about, okay, we've got some challenges. Let's be creative, figure them out. And I know we're going to be amazing.
Well, was there anything that surprised you, that you came in here that you maybe didn't know about, but after taking this job, you're like, oh, this is interesting. Anything that's kind of out of the ordinary or surprised you being in this role?
Yeah, I think I knew, but we talked about it a little bit before, the breadth of passion for sports across the board, right? It's not just football, right? You can go to a lot of schools where it's football or it's just basketball, but we have fans that are there for every team. I mean, just to have the fans that are there giving lay to the other team's volleyball, that is unbelievable. That does not happen anywhere else in this country. And I'd just seen glimpses of it. I'd been here enough to know that this was a place of passion, but I am continually blown away by the Aloha spirit and the love that our community shares with our athletic department, our university, and everybody who's connected with it. It's truly humbling to be a part of it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending your time with us today.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We'll be back with the interim provost right after this to talk more about UH Manoa. Stay with us.
Hello and welcome back here to Spotlight Now as we continue on our conversation about the priorities at the University of Hawaii, this time focusing in on the academic side. But before we get to our next guest, of course, we want to continue to encourage those of you who are watching both on air and online to engage in the conversation. You can head over to Facebook, enter your questions there, or once again, email us here at spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
And we are checking those throughout the show, and we want to welcome in UH Interim Provost Vassilis Syrmos. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
So we heard about the ask on the athletic side. We know that, of course, there are asks on the academic side as well. Tell us a little bit about, let's set the stage first. We heard a lot in the last year about federal funding cuts and the changes in the priorities of this administration versus the last one. How has the university been impacted?
Yes, first of all, let me say that last year was a record year for extramural funding. The University of Hawaii brought in $750 million in monies from the federal government and also other sources. So this year, because of the new administration, we had a substantial amount of federal cuts. They come up to around $110 million from our funding, around 85 programs. Most of them are, as you can probably guess, they are in energy, climate change, around $35 million, $40 million in education, especially for Native Hawaiian programs, because UH Manoa and UH as a whole is a Native Hawaiian serving institution, so quite a drastic reduction in funds that first year.
When you look at specifically some of the research dollars that are spent with the University of Hawaii and just the institution and all it does in the various research fields, how have things been going since some of these cuts with those research projects and some of the departments that have had to scale back? How have they been able to fill the gap and continue this important research that we use in the community through various, reports and studies. If you can give us an update on where things are with some of the departments.
Yeah, so let me give you a little bit of an example. We have around $600 million in expenditure per year in extramural funds. So we think this year is going to be around $550 million. We lost around 85 jobs out of these cuts, but we were able to move employees around in other funding in order for them not to lose their job. So we have been fortunate to have such an expansive portfolio of extramural funding, so it's not affecting our employees as much. I'll give you an example of the magnitude of the economic drive that this extramural funding is. As I said, $600 million annually expenditures, more than 5,000 employees on this grant. So this is one of the largest economic driven industries here in the state. The other thing is, as we're getting into the new appropriations budget, we were able to actually revive some of these programs. We are very thankful of our congressional delegation. We're very thankful of our appropriators within Congress that we were able to restore some of that funding coming next year. So we feel moderately optimistic that we will continue some of that important work, but we need to be very careful of what is coming next. The executive branch usually or sometimes does not following the legislative branch.
Yeah, and so unpredictable as we experienced. I'm curious, obviously the state can't make up $110 million. So what are you asking for this legislative session in terms of support to try to help some of those research dollars? You can't backfill all of them, certainly.
Absolutely not. And you had Matt here in the previous segment. So we haven't asked much this session. I think the president has been very thoughtful of the economic state of our state. So we only had two major asks. One was in athletics, and Matt, covered that pretty well. And then the other one is in health care. It's a modest one. It's around $3.8 million. And it is on three areas, cancer care, dementia, and neurology. And then the third one is in mental health and addiction medicine. So modest, and we want to increase our healthcare workforce, and workforce is very important for us, so we want to hit on those elements.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because when you talk about the University of Hawaii as a whole, and of course healthcare, a big issue here in the state of Hawaii, and having doctors and physicians who are qualified to be able to support the community, people may not correlate directly the University of Hawaii with this need and this vital part of our community. Why do you think that's an important priority for the University of Hawaii to be focusing in on this, and as you mentioned, workforce in this area?
I've been here for almost 35 years. I came as a young assistant professor in engineering. And when I get that question from a lot of people, what I'm trying to answer to these questions is, can you imagine a state of Hawaii without a medical school, without us actually educating the future doctors in this state? Can you imagine the future of this state without a nursing or a college of education? So workforce development is huge here, and the impact to the state is tremendous. So we are a vital part of this community.
Yeah, and when you think about that investment, how does that ripple out? That, between $3 and $4 million that you're asking for, what is the overall impact of that, for our state?
So let me give you an example. Part of that $3 million is to start an oncology fellowship. So these fellowship programs in the medical school with our partners, whether it's HPH or Queens, are probably the most prestigious programs that bring in doctors and residents that they come here to learn from the best. So that is the quality of care that we want to have for our state. So the ripple effects are huge, and then where would I start? You go from cancer care, cardiology, neurology. We are blessed that we have a great school of medicine, nursing, and all the wraparound services here.
And so let's say that does get approved. I mean, what would be the ideal case in terms of actually seeing results, getting that workforce filled, and what would that ideal scenario look like?
So it will take around 2-3 years to stand up these programs and these clinical placements, because a lot of those programs do depend on clinical placements. So we do have to depend on our partners, our health partners. And then also, I don't know how much is known, but the state of Hawaii did apply for a very large grant out of the Department of Health and Human Services. We just got $190 million, the governor's office, and out of that, 65 is coming to UH, and most of that is for rural health. So one piece dovetails with the other. So great synergy, so we're feeling hopeful.
Given all the uncertainty over the last year, how do you think that has or hasn't impacted the student experience? How do you sort of shelter the students from feeling the impacts that, not just the University of Hawaii, I mean, this is education, writ large across the country, but how do you shield the students and make sure that their academic experience is not impacted by all of this uncertainty?
What a great question that is, and it is difficult, right, because our students are everywhere. So we don't want to seal them. Actually, we want to expose them to whatever happens out there. We want actually to educate them to be more cautious, to be more intentional, and actually have a great experience while they are at UH Manoa. So I don't want to seal them. Actually, I want to expose them to all that. This is a life learning opportunity, believe it or not, and hopefully they'll take it with them as they become professionals or go and do great things in their careers.
What can you tell us about the state of UH Manoa at this point, in terms of enrollment and interest? There was a point in time where there were some colleges throughout the country that were concerned that people, these students coming out of high school weren't necessarily pursuing higher education anymore, and we seeing a drop in enrollment. What are your thoughts about the trends right now, what we're seeing, but also specifically at UH Manoa with enrollment numbers and the activation of students on campus?
So, in general, nationally, flagship institutions like Manoa have seen modest increases in enrollment, and so has Manoa the last 3-4 years. And one part of that is because coming to the flagship is not only just the education, it's actually the experience that the students get from campus life, athletics, what we have to offer. And to give you an example, we talk a lot about distance learning and online. Yes, at Manoa, we have 48% of our students taking at least one class online, but then we have 46% being 100% face-to-face, and then the other 6% being just 6% being completely online. So you see, at Manoa, the experience as a flagship institution is more than just the academic education.
Tell us a little bit about what you've seen in terms of foreign enrollment. I mean, I'm curious because we've seen a lot of immigration enforcement across the continent and some here in Hawaii. And has that impacted student interest from out of the country in UH Manoa?
It has, in a very modest way. We have been very thankful and lucky that our graduate student population has remained pretty much flat. So international students still feel safe to come to a place like in Hawaii, much more than in the continent. And however, it has affected our undergraduate education. We have a small dip on the international enrollment there.
I have to say I'm a proud graduate of UH Manoa, and it has been some time since I've been on campus, but I recently visited, and there has been a lot that has been done to that campus, a lot of new facilities, a lot of things have been upgraded. Where do you think things stand in terms of the upgrades that continue to be needed? This is, after all, a school that is over 100 years old, and there needs to be improvements that need to be made, obviously, and that has been one of the things that UH Manoa has continually addressed, is just the wear and tear, the maintenance of the capital improvement projects that are needed there. What can you tell us about where things are going just overall with facilities and the student experience in some of those areas?
So let me start with Manoa. It is an old campus, 100 years old. So there are two parts of that. We need to do the repair and maintenance and defer maintenance to maintain what we have, at least in the current state. And then we need to do some new projects, and we are doing some new projects. Some of that is the Sinclair Library, which is changing. It's going to be a $60-70 million renovation by the time it is all said and done. It's going to be our new student center, so it is going to be an amazing place after it is done by the end of this calendar year. And then we have the McCarthy Mall, the beautification of the McCarthy Mall. The McCarthy Mall is completely going to be redone, and Snyder Hall, so great investment there. It's going to look great at the end of the day. We want to do more in the athletics complex, so Matt is working on that. And then my number one priority when it comes to facilities would be in student housing in Manoa. So I really like to walk down there and look how it is. I think we can do much better. So that will be my first priority.
Yeah. I'm curious, sort of similar to what we asked A.D. Elliott, and that is, what has your interaction been like with lawmakers? Because we do know it has been contentious in the past. I'm curious, how your asks are being received at this point.
Yeah, so let me start first in saying UH Manoa, as a flagship institution, is extremely well funded by the state government compared to other flagship institutions in the continent. So we get a lot of support. Sometimes we get tough love from the legislature. We wouldn't be able to do these things without them. We all want one thing, for UH to move forward. Sometimes we agree to disagree on the way moving forward. But overall, I think we all want the same thing for UH. Is an outstanding institution. I don't know if people understand the value of this institution in this very small state.
What would you want the viewing audience to know about, UH Manoa and because as we mentioned in our earlier segment, there are still people out there who are skeptical about spending more money at UH for tax dollars to be going to this institution other than what is already there. What is your case and your pitch for why this campus specifically is so important for not only taxpayer dollars, but for the entire state?
So UH Manoa is probably one of the top 30 public institutions in the country as a flagship institution. So the experience that our kids have at UH Manoa, it is unreal. And I don't think that I'm very passionate about this because I'm here for 35 years, and I don't think people understand what a great institution this is and what we have to offer, not only in the state, and we have been a huge factor in this state, but also in the nation. We should be very proud of what we do locally, nationally, and internationally. We are a well-renowned institution. I'm very proud.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. We're going to continue our conversation after this break with Hawaii Pacific Health. Stay with us.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live. We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Mahia.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
Welcome back to Spotlight Now. We are going to be continuing on in our Community Spotlight segment. It is a segment brought to you by one of our partners at Hawaii Pacific Health, and we like to do this from time to time to catch up with all the things that they are doing in the community.
Yeah, and today we are focusing in on one of the most common birth defects and how that is being treated right here at home, and we're so lucky to be joined by Dr. Andres Bratensack, who is a pediatric cardiologist at Kapiolani and the medical director of the Pediatric Heart Center. Thank you for being here, Doctor.
Thank you.
The Pediatric Heart Center specifically opened about 3 years ago, is my understanding. Let's back up a little bit and just talk about what's being treated there and why that's so important.
Sounds good. So the Pediatric Heart Center treats congenital heart defects. And in order to understand congenital heart defects, let me explain what the heart actually does. The heart is a big muscle made out of chambers. It pumps blood to the lungs and it pumps blood to the body. And congenital heart defects are defects that are present at birth. That's what congenital means. And our Pediatric Heart Center treats all kinds of heart defects in children as well as in adults, young adults, that was there at birth. So we are dealing with congenital birth defects or congenital heart defects and any kind of pediatric heart defects.
So talk to us about this service and facility that is at Kapiolani. How has that been helping this community specifically, and the difference that it is making, and what was happening prior to this service being available here in Hawaii locally?
Yeah, so in order to understand what it really means, I would need to track back more than a decade. I came back to Hawaii after my training in 2012, more than 14 years ago, and at that point I was the first and only one pediatric cardiologist hired by Kapiolani Medical Center. And I had this vision to have a heart center where we can treat patients, all kinds of patients, children and young adults with congenital heart defects. So imagine heart defects come minor and major. A minor heart defect might be a puka in the heart, or a heart valve or a heart chamber is not perfectly formed or too narrow. But it can be major heart defects too, that half of a heart is missing. And the things that we need to do with it differs quite a bit. Sometimes you need to give medication, which we could do in the past, but sometimes you need to do a procedure or surgery, an open heart surgery or cardiac catheterization. And in the past, 5 weeks in a year, a mainland specialist came to Hawaii to provide those specialized procedures to our children. And the remaining 47 weeks out of a year, those specialized procedures were just not available. So children and families who needed those procedures, interventions, they had to travel to the mainland to receive those interventions. And quite honestly, it just broke my heart what happened with those families. Imagine you are a family with a child with a heart defect. You need to travel to the mainland. You may need to wait a week or two to do the surgery. Then you are recovering in the hospital. If there are complications, you may recover there for 3-4 weeks. It's possible you need another surgery. Now you are counting the months. You are there 2 to 3 months. I've seen many families who had to uproot their life from Hawaii and relocate to the mainland, lost their jobs, and it really changed their life. So it truly broke my heart to see what was happening before this heart center opened.
Wow. And how many children are you treating there now that it's been open for a few years?
So congenital heart defects are the most common birth defects of all kinds. You have about 15,000 kids born in Hawaii every single year, and 1% of them are affected by congenital heart defects. Every year, 150 kids are born with congenital heart defects. We treat those children and other children who have all kinds of pediatric heart problems.
Wow, and I just imagine, what kind of a difference does it make? I mean, you talked about the burden on the family, and I can imagine how difficult that must be, but also the change in the outcome, right? When you're able to heal at home, I mean, what kind of a difference do you see for the patients and for the families?
Absolutely. It's night and day since the heart center opened. Now, I can say that we can treat 80% of all these defects at home here. The patients and the families don't need to travel. They are supported by families in our hospital at Kapiolani Medical Center. And I plan to make sure that 95% of these defects in children and young adults can be treated here and never need to travel out of the state.
Just for context, for those who may be expecting, is this something that you're able to predetermine before the child is born, or is it something where often cases you have to wait to the delivery? How soon can this be detected, and how does that help with just the overall care that's provided in planning for this?
Great question. With a heart center, it doesn't just come that we can do heart surgeries and procedures here. It comes that we do all kind of parts of the diagnosis. So diagnosing birth defects before the babies are born is part of our duty and job at the heart center. We provide fetal echocardiogram or fetal ultrasound, which means that we are able to see these heart defects in the womb and detect it before birth, so we can tell those families and moms and dads what to expect and how that baby is going to be and what kind of procedures we may need to do.
When you look at, just in your own time of being here in Hawaii, you mentioned you came here 14 years ago to be the one and only specialist in this. How has this changed in the time that you've been working, and what is your hope for the future for families who are facing this?
It's like 180 degrees. It really makes me proud to tell families that we can take care of their kids without needing to travel outside. So it's very different. I'm really hopeful that we can bring into Kapiolani all kinds of the latest and the best technologies, and we are able to provide a world-class cardiac care at Kapiolani Medical Center for all the kids in Hawaii with any kind of heart defect.
Yeah, so just before we let you go, is there any other final message that people should know? I keep thinking about those parents out there who are expecting or that have gone through this. What should they know, or if they want more information or questions that maybe they should be asking if they want to know about this and they are just trying to prepare for what's to come?
I think the most important message is that they should trust Kapiolani because this has changed. It is not how it used to be. Now with the heart center, we can take care of them. So just give us a call and then make sure that they let their doctors know early on so we can detect those defects, we can define what is the problem, and we can talk to them for safe care.
Yeah, we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you, just as a doctor, when you see these babies, the idea of a baby having open heart surgery, they're so small. What is it like for you when you're able to treat them here at home and then, see them as they get better and progress?
I have to say it's fantastic. The smallest kids that we do procedures are actually less than 3 pounds at Kapiolani Medical Center. Their heart is the size of a kukui nut. And in order to provide these procedures right here at home, I think it's amazing. Makes me only proud.
Yeah, thank you so much. Perfect community spotlight.
Yeah,
wonderful way to end the show today. Thank you so much for being here, Doctor. Thank you for being here. We'll be right back after this.
From the moment you wake up.
Hawaii News Now brings you the stories that impact your day.
With more on the breaking news, we go live to Casey Lund.
Ready with the push alert? I'm going live.
We have an update to the breaking news we brought you this morning on Sunrise.
Okay, guys, as soon as this wraps, toss to Manoa.
And we've been covering this story all day.
Now we go live to Mahia for a new development.
Stand by for breaking news. They just captured the suspect.
That's confirmed?
Yes, sources just confirmed it.
The news you need the moment it breaks.
Here on Hawaii News Now.
First alert traffic is like always having a helpful passenger right next to you.
There's a crash up ahead in the left lane.
When we see a backup, we'll tell you live on TV.
That doesn't look too good.
And send an alert to your phone.
I'll type, you drive.
First alert traffic on TV, streaming, and on the Hawaii News Now app.
Keeping you and your ohana safe.
Spotlight Now with Yunji Denise and Ryan Kalei Suji. Connecting you with newsmakers from throughout our islands. Going in depth with Hawaii's leaders. And taking your questions live. Spotlight Now, where Hawaii comes to talk.
Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in here today and providing all of your comments and questions, especially when it comes to University of Hawaii athletics. As we noted, there is a lot of spirited debate going on in the community about not only the athletic department, about how much the state should invest in the department as well as the athletes. So thank you to everybody who's written in and posted your comments, but you really heard from Athletic Director Matt Elliott stating his case why he believes that this is important for the institution and also for the state as a whole.
Yeah, and he's in a tough spot because the ground is basically shifting underneath his feet, and it's not just him, it's universities across the country. Unfortunately for us, our coffers are not as deep as some of the other schools, and so he's talking about schools allocating $20 million just to pay student athletes. He's asking to allocate $5 million to do that, and it'll be interesting to see whether lawmakers give him that support.
Yeah, and also just the changes that are happening on campuses as well. And so, we heard about the request that is also coming in from UH Manoa, and really the interim provost's claim of why UH Manoa is also an investment worth making for the state because of its notoriety on a national level.
Yeah, and then our last guest talking about the Pediatric Heart Center at Kapiolani Medical Center and just the amazing innovations that has led to. We're going to stick with healthcare next week. We'll be talking with Jason Chang of Queens and Dr. Nadine Tensal, who's the head of the Hawaii Medical Association, their thoughts on the proposed partnership between Hawaii Pacific Health and HMSA. Interesting to see that, and hope to get your comments as well. Email us spotlightnow@hawaiinewsnow.com.
We'll see you next week. Aloha.